So let's start right away. My talk is about what if using GraphQL would be easy, especially in SvelteKit. Who knows about GraphQL? Okay, no big portion, but we will start from the very basic. So it's good, I think, for everyone being up to speed. And who knows about SvelteKit? It's about the same. Not everyone, not everyone. So first of all, what is GraphQL? If you go on the doc, actually on the main website of GraphQL, you see that there is three parts. The first part is the server part. It's where you describe the data. And then describing the data, everything is typed. So you can, from the start, having great support for types. So people liking TypeScript will love GraphQL. Second thing is the client request. You ask for what you want. And here you will recognize that it's almost JSON. So it's very familiar to go to GraphQL because it's just the key of the JSON, not the value. Then the server is doing a lot of things and then returning to the client the response with a regular JSON. If I mix it up in another way around, we have the client request. We go with the GraphQL spec, and actually it's only a spec, so it's the language of GraphQL. It's going to the server. The server will resolve a lot of fields. Each field will get resolved. And then it's going back to the client with a JSON, very regular JSON. First thing is about doing a query. So when we want to get data, we call this a query. So here we have the query called user list, and I require the ID and the name, something quite straightforward. And the result will be something like this, a list of users. Here I have 4 users. There is an interesting concept also around fragments. So instead of writing everything in the query, the ID and the name, you can split this part of it with fragment. And here I call the fragment called user info with the ID and the name. And then inside the query, I just put ... user info. Developer like to reduce the amount of code, so we will reuse a lot of the fragment. And then we get the exact same result, which is kind of cool, right? So then what's the deal with Svelte in the end? And actually, what's the deal with SvelteKit? So what we said just before, Svelte is only the front end. SvelteKit is a bit bigger with the routing, server side, and everything. The deal, I think, it's about data. So GraphQL is about having the data or having the semantic of the data, and SvelteKit is about transporting everything. So let's do a bit of history. When you want to launch a website, a cool website, of course. I don't know if this domain is taken, by the way. You will have some data or some service hosted somewhere. And then back in the day, we were doing what we called MPA, multi-page application, PHP, C#. So basically, you hit the server, you do a request, the server is going to get data. If it's a database or service, we don't care. So there is a call. Then it's coming back to the website, and it's what we call in the days now SSR, server-side rendering. We have a lot of 3-letter name everywhere. Each tweet is about what is the best 3-letter tweet. So this is one SSR. You will see this. So NPA was the king of SSR somehow. And then you have another way of doing websites. Let's start in, I think, with mainly Angular, maybe one popular framework back then. And then SPA works a bit differently. So your website grabs the source of the website. So SPA stands for single page application. Yeah? And then from the website, you do a network call to your database or service or whatever. So it's a network call. And this is, and then of course, on the website, you need to have a pretty good caching, because if not, you will request always something to the API, so it gets complicated. And this is what we call CSR, client-side rendering. Okay, So we have the two models, SPA with CSR and MPA with SSR. I'm happy that I put a lot of 3 letters. And now we have SvelteKit. SvelteKit actually is taking both things, and everything is done automatically somehow. So we have, let's go back, GraphQL for semantic. And then we have the enabler, I would say, SvelteKit enabling these different modes, SSR and CSR, and very powerful feature like stores and preprocessor. And today I'm happy to announce, actually today, a new release of Houdini. Houdini is a library dedicated for the client, to build, to bring, to close the gap between these two things, getting data of GraphQL and SvelteKit. So let's dig a bit into what is Houdini. Houdini, you know, it's a magician, so the idea is to disappear. So in the end, we will not see a lot of Houdini. This is the goal. So first thing in our project, we put one GraphQL file, the one we saw at the very beginning. So userlist.gql, which is exactly what we typed before. I don't know if you know, but if you configure your ID in the right way, you will have auto-completion, IntelliSense in all the schema. Because the server knows everything, then you will be able to introspect. So if you do control space, you will see ID, you will see name, and you can't do any spelling mistake. That's why I love this. And then you will hit one command, generate, and it will generate store. Each query is a store. So with this in mind, we will write our first component. So userlist.svelte, and I'm very happy that I have a PowerPoint like this. I have no problem of live coding. And in this Svelte component, you will see first that we have a prefix. So the user list have a prefix, GQL underscore. So like this, very easy, GQL underscore, and you will see all your store popping up. And then here, user list dot fetch. Fetch, we want to grab the data. Okay, so we fetch the data from the server. And then we have what I said just before, everything typed. So I can display here the ID and the username. It cannot do any mistake. And when I go again on my user list, I add a new field, then generate everything again. Every type is again coming from the store and being able to display. And this was for then just before, this was for CSR. So I launch my website and I do network calls. Now the cool thing today is to do first server-side rendering and then network call when we navigate through the application. To do that, you need to, oops, I'm not going in the right direction. To do that, you had one line in the load function. So the load function, something very common in SvelteKit, will have something like this, giving an event. Then you have this one line, and it's exactly the same line that we were doing before. So a nice copy paste will do the job. Plus, you have to add inside the event, like this, it will get the fetcher, but everything is baked for you. Then you have nothing to worry about. And doing this, you will have server-side rendering by default. So you do F5 on your page, the data is directly in the body of your HTML. If you go through a navigation, client-side navigation, then you will do a network call like before. So you have CSR, SSR. You have also, of course, inside of it, a cache built in. Let's see if we can have a look a bit later. And then what I showed you is that we did this in two separate files. So I have one file for GraphQL and one file for the Svelte component. It's one way to develop, but we have another way to develop is also to remove this file and to do what we call inline document. So inside the Svelte file directly, you can see that we have this special tag GraphQL where we put our query inside. Here I put everything in there, but we can also use the fragment, no problem. So it's just about preferences. Do you want to work one style and another style? Both are available to you. And here actually we make use of preprocessor. So we wrote some logic, and in the end it's creating exactly the same code as what we saw before, with loaders and getting the SSR working and CSR working. So what's the deal? Now we have everything. We can get data. It's typed. It's inline external document. We have caching. Then what's next? And this is the actually key point. What's next? And it's features. What I want you to use is feature of GraphQL. First thing, pagination. Who had to implement the pagination? I think most of the apps, right, have to do with this. And then how do I do this? It can be complicated, huh? Actually, you have two kinds of pagination. I have my on left side, it's what I call the page by page. So I see two items and I can navigate to page 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you have another kind of navigation called infinite scroll, where you do load more and then you see 4 items, 6 items, etc. So if I hit the next button, then it's increasing on the right side, and on the left side I see the number 3 to 4. And how to code this part? I will go back on my user list.GQL, and here I just have inputs. So this is a regular GraphQL query. We have the limit and the offset, and depending on this, I will see limit 2 element, offset 0. And then when I go to the page 2, I will do offset 2, and that's it. Nothing special. If I go back on the page 1, everything is cached, so you don't even need a network request. Everything is automatically done. So basically, there is nothing to do. Everything works out of the box. To do the infinite scroll, then you have to think a bit more. And here, to make things easy, we added only one directive. So directive, it's called here @paginate. So on this user connection, which is a list, and it's the same thing as a list, then you add this @paginate, and by default, you will get one function called load more, and the load more will just load more data, and will append inside the list the new element. So just with this part, little directive, you have your infinite scroll working. I found it all great. Let's go to mutation now. So we spoke a lot about queries. Queries about getting data. Mutation is about mutating data, changing data. First thing to do is maybe update the username. So I will write a query, so or external file or inline the document, as you prefer. So here I give the ID to know which ID I want to change the name, and then the name. And then on the Svelte component, we have to have just one function, which is update user. And we have, again, a new store created just for the mutation, starting by GQL underscore, as usual. And then I will have update user. And here I don't do a fetch. Fetching would be just to grab data. Here I will do mutate. And I mutate with the two variable ID and name. Nothing fancy, but it's working. And all stores having this ID will be updated across all the applications. So if you have a list with this name, one place you update the name, everything gets updated. Just with this one line of code, everything is synchronized. This is also pretty cool. It's going further. Of course. Something called optimistic UI. Maybe you heard about it. Yeah. It's complicated to do optimistic UI. And here it's, I think, not complicated at all. So we just add a bit more thing in the mutate. We add one thing called optimistic response. And here, at the start, I decide my name will be optimistic name. Of course, I could decide better, but just for the example, we could imagine like this. And if we go a bit in this example, I put my name somewhere, Couet. Then I trigger this, I call this update user with my new name, Couet. It will immediately change all the store with my new name or my new optimistic. Then it will go to do a network call and get the right data. So the idea of optimistic update is that 80% of the time it will work well. So people will think it's instant. And on 20% on the case, maybe it's coming back with an error or something you were not allowed to do, and then it will revert back the changes. And again, this is out of the box, just adding this optimistic. So you know about it. You are an optimist person. Let's do this. If you are not optimist, you can just move this out.
What can go wrong?
Next big topic: how to add an element in the list. How to append the list. So everything is a store. So how to add something in the list. Here also, nice trick. we have a directive called @list, and we just give the name of this list. Okay. When we hit the generate button, it will create for us a fragment. So you remember the fragment of before, and the fragment will make sure what you insert will be in line with what you have in the list. So by default here, I'm requiring ID and name, and by default, the fragment will have also ID and name. But if you change tomorrow to have another field, it will generate everything again. So everything will be always consistent. Then same thing as before, I create a adduser.gql, just a regular mutation. And here I want as a result a fragment, the fragment that was generated for me. So like this, again, I know that everything is in sync. Then in my component, I do my mutation, adding my new user. And then that's it. The user is added to my list. So almost nothing to do, generates, and then having the right fragment name is doing the job. If you remember also at the beginning, if you configure well your IDE, everything gets auto-completed and everything. So the underscore insert, you cannot make mistake there. So you use the list, then the automatic fragment, and then the mutate, and you are done. Scalars. What is scalars? No one knows? Let's see. So in GraphQL, you have 5 types to work with. So integer, float, string, boolean, and ID. So and that's it. You cannot do more. Of course, you can do more with something. So how can I work with a date? Because it's quite common to have a date, right? So of course, you can do more. On the server side, we have this scalar capability, and then you have to define them. So I want to have this scalar of date time, and then I will manage to serialize and deserialize. But this is on the server side. But on the client side with Houdini, we also deserialize it in the right way, and you can customize it. And then it's already a date. So your store is getting already the type you want. And so you don't need to manually everywhere parse it as a date, parse it as a date. And it's valid for all the scalar you have. So like this, I'm just using a regular store, user dot, auto completion is coming by default. I'm also a huge fan of TypeScript, so everything is TypeScript ready. So this was about Houdini. Please, all of you go on the GitHub repo, give a bit of hype to this project. We need it. But that's not it.
One more thing.
Today, we announced also a release of KitQL, a new version of KitQL. So actually, the last 2 months, we worked with the creator of Houdini. We are now both maintainers on both sides. Houdini focuses on the client side and all what I showed you before. KitQL focuses more on the whole ecosystem of SvelteKit and GraphQL. Because here I spoke only about the client side, but you saw before SvelteKit is capable of doing backend side, backend code. Why not putting our GraphQL server inside SvelteKit directly? Actually, it's what I do every day in my daily work today. So I work for it, and then now I open source with this KitQL. And inside KitQL, what do I have? I have a lot of packages, actually. And KitQL essentially is only bundling all the packages together to make sure they work well together. And I throw a few good conventions, or at least I think they're good. You can come and comment on the repo, no problem. So the first one is Yoga. Yoga is a GraphQL server that can go on a lot of different platforms, and one of them is SvelteKit, of course. So very powerful, you have to try it. Actually, you have to try it through KitQL. Then Envelope, it's a way to extend also your GraphQL server. So if you want to have rate limiting or some caching response, you can do this at this level. Logging, you can go crazy there. Then you have modules also. Modules is a way to code in a separate concern, and we'll go more in detail just after. Then we have CodeGen, of course. CodeGen will generate types also on the server side. So as I said before, TypeScript is, if you do GraphQL without types, you miss something somehow. So all this is baked in. Then you have scalars, of course, what I explained before for the server, it's there. You have as well GraphQL ESLint. So I don't know who just before in the project you say no to ESLint, but me, I say always yes. Please check my code, check that everything is ready. And there is a package, not only my code is ready, but my GraphQL is also following a lot of rules. So it's a nice package also to look at. And then there is a small Vite plugin to be able to run the generate alone, because I don't want to type generate all the time. And I'm a lazy person. So when I save my GraphQL file, he knows that it's a GraphQL file and he generates in the background, generate all the types, and then I just have to enjoy my typing. In the whole ecosystem, you have also GraphQL coming for free somehow. So I don't know if you know GraphQL. For the people who know more REST, it's like the Swagger of GraphQL. So you go here on this page, and then since we know the server, we have all the types, then we can have all the documentation. So on the left part, we have an explorer to be able to build your query with a nice UI. You click boxes. Then you are able on the right side to see all the docs, all your types and everything. And then in the middle, you have the request. So here you can type freely with at the bottom some variables. And on the right side, you have the response. Let's go back to this module development way of doing things. So in a project, there is a module folder, which is the key to me. And a module, for me, contains everything. So if, for example, here I showed the user one, and then the user will contain the script for the database, resolver for GraphQL, also all the UI components, ready to do CSR and everything. Everything is a one package, and then I just use it and I compose actually my application. And I think this is the key. Composing your application with the root, you just grab the user, grab the display list of user, update user, and then you're done. And I realized that in a lot of projects, we have to redo user, profile, role, permission. Every project has this, right? So my next goal would be to share actually, to share with the Kit modules. So when we have a user package, which is singing up and then can be shipped, the idea is that other projects can just grab it and they have everything directly out of the box. Not only the UI component or the server component, but everything bind together, ready to be used.
We're making 1%.
By the way, I'm Jean-Yves. Thank you for your attention. And please follow me. Let's connect. Any questions?
I had one, but I forgot.
Too much content.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed something because I was really late. But how do you handling kind of partial types for the queries? Maybe I missed it because.
No, but I spoke about optimistic UI, and this is quite close to partial data. And it's something that we don't support fully today, but we are exploring how to make it. Actually, we are using it, but we don't expose it for the user to make use of it. And we're exploring this in the next iteration. Yeah, it will be an interesting thing. By the way, now that you speak about partial data, we handle also prefetch in our store. This was a bit complex, that's why I mentioned the prefetch is also working out of the box. Because when we prefetch something, you want to put it in the store, but you don't want to display it. And this is handled with this one line of code. You have nothing to worry about. We worry about it for you.
I have one question. I remember now. Like for SvelteKit, for the pages, you can either use the load function or you can use the get endpoint. Does the GraphQL server-side render also work inside of the get endpoint, like the page endpoints?
Yeah, but the get endpoint actually is not useful for our way of doing things. The load function is sufficient for everything.
Yeah, I mean it is the load function actually.
Yeah,
like the page endpoints wraps around the load function and injects it. So I was wondering if it's possible to use like for data fetching, usually you can just use the page endpoint.
Yeah, but for regular data fetching, yeah. But here we bake for you all the things.
Okay.
So meaning that I don't see where we could call these stores in a get function, because the whole point is that to fill a store.
Yeah.
And that's where I don't see, and maybe there is a use case, and we spoke about it with the other guy, Alec, but we didn't find a scenario where it's useful. So today the load function was sufficient for our use cases, but maybe tomorrow there is a proper way. Other questions?
Can you go back to the load function example?
It's far away. Load function.
Okay, I have a question in between. Did you really prepare all of this today?
Yes.
You can leave it like this. Maybe as a feedback, you could also eliminate some of the boilerplate here inside this other section.
Okay.
You could create a GQL user list.load, and you just export const load equals GQL user list.load, and this just wraps this construct.
The whole thing here.
Yeah. So it's the single line instead of the additional await, additional return, additional passing the event.
Yeah, we have to see, because the ID is here, you will do your own logic, right? So when you are on a page with an ID, you will want to see the variables for this ID, and you need to write this code.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what you will do. So the user ID, for example, you will need to add it on line number 3. I have my line number. And then this code, I cannot code your application for you. So you will have to write this code.
Works for simpler use cases, but not.
You need to expand a bit.
Maybe if the data is only related to the URL, like if you have, for example, a restaurant review site, and inside of the URL you have the ID from the restaurant, then you might be able to do that, I guess.
Yeah, but it's you decide that this is the ID, the name of the ID, and then maybe you use the session, maybe you use stuff. So this is your logic.
Yeah.
Actually, we iterate quite a lot, and we would be happy to reduce even more. One question, maybe I can ask a question to the TypeScript user. In TypeScript, you have to have a type for the args, for the inputs, and then a type for the return. What I love in the GS doc is that we can have one thing on top, which have the type of the function and the return. Would it be possible in TypeScript to have one line with both? And it's maybe this that we need to explore more, because I'd like to type more.
Write an example.
Yeah, we can have a look.
I got a quick question. I'm not sure I'm not that deep into SvelteKit, but I think normally if you do the endpoint setting, then if you call the endpoint right on the server side, it won't be an HTTP call, it won't be, it will be just a function call, right?
Exactly.
Is this the same thing?
Yes, it's exactly the same thing. So in GraphQL, we don't have a lot of endpoints everywhere. We have only one, which is the GraphQL job. And this is the power of it. So I didn't spend time in there, but then you don't have to maintain a list of users with only ID and name, a list of users with ID, name, and birthday. And this is the power of GraphQL. You just query what you want. And not having an endpoint with everything. Then you have a huge payload. You can pick and choose. All right. Then
Thank you so much.
thank you.